All right, Mr. Nick Hazloch, we're here and we're going to have a little chat. To everyone listening, Nick reached out to me first because he wanted to have a little conversation about a Vedic astrology idea that you said you had a huge engagement with. So we're going to start there and ramble wherever we may see fit.
Cool.
Yeah. So, Nick, what did you post on Instagram that got this outpouring from the crowds?
Well, it all began once upon a time. I've been posting a lot on my stories, and it just feels like a comfortable place for like just more of the insider, not everybody test realm for, coming out on social media with more of a message that I'm bringing, and everybody knows I'm into astrology. And I guess I've just felt a shift in a way to deliver that finally to where it feels easy and simple, just through the question of just, hey, have you felt this, or did you notice that? And so I posted something because I've been noticing people with emotional stomach gut issues, which is Virgo and Pisces. Like Virgo rules the gut and the body, where Pisces is more like the emotions and the mind and, the great watery abyss of the unknown ocean. And so it was a little story, a couple sentences, and then all of a sudden, I think you actually were the first person that replied to it.
Yeah. So maybe I can give you some context on why I replied to that, and we can go off from that. I've been having a lot of conflict domestically, just little stuff. We got a little baby at home, and there's a lot of stuff just from broiling over lately. And I told you that I sense in my life. Let me just make sure the audio is right here. It's just getting this rhythm right with the audio. I sense in my life that I notice my interactions and energetic shifts insofar as the full moons and the new moons are concerned, which is really reductive, really simple stuff. But for me, coming into astrology from afar, it's sort of the beginner's way in. I was like, oh man, I notice, I stay up late when it's a full moon, and I have all this energy, and all these shifts start to happen on new moons, which is sort of the 101. But I was having all this stuff going on, and I'm like, that's so interesting because we're in between moons right now. I wonder what's going on. And you posted this thing, and I wanted to know more actually about what was going on. Even though you said the window that you were addressing, this transit window, was far larger than just a momentary blip I was experiencing. So how wide is this specific transit that you're talking about?
So the nodes in Rahu and Ketu, so Rahu's the north node, Ketu's the south node in Vedic, and in Western it's the dragon's head or the dragon's tail, and these are known as the ecliptics. And I might mess this up specifically, but generally it's where I think the solar and the lunar eclipse is, or where the new moon and the full moon. I need to keep this guy next to me. Yeah, where the eclipses are, where like the solar eclipse is and the lunar eclipse is, and so those are 2-month transits, and so they're on a 180 axis, and so every 2 months they move, and because the moon is the fastest moving celestial body, it doesn't even get considered as a transit. It's like it's always in transit. It's just too fast. Whereas like when the larger, slower moving planets move from sign to sign, it's much more noticeable, archetypal, overarching like shifts in themes and events. And so these Rahu, Pisces, Ketu, Virgo, which is significant for me because I'm Virgo ascendant first house, so Ketu's on my first house body, and Pisces is my opposite in my 7th house. And it's a similar aspect to just the general relationship between Virgo and Pisces, because Virgo is the singular self symbol of the body in the chart. Like every other symbol of all the signs aren't just like normal humans, like Capricorn's like a sea goat alligator, and Gemini's the twins, and Pisces is a fish, and Aries is a ram, and Scorpio is a scorpion. So like Virgo is the maiden or the virgin, or in Vedic it's the wheat and the shaft, with like the wheat and separating the wheat from the chaff, like the seed from the stalk, and progress, refinement. And so it's ruled by the gut, and it's also the house of enemies and obstacles. And so the 6th house is what it's also Mercury ruled, and it's what challenges us because it's enemies and obstacles. And without challenges, there's no refinement or progress, which is the main theme of the house. And then it also rules the gut and digestion and like the physical nature of the body.
Is what you just said that there's no progress? Is that
without challenge?
There's no progress without challenge. Is that what we're going through right now?
Correct.
Because that's very,
Correct.
very live
Correct.
for me.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, because the node is in the house of enemies, obstacles, challenge, progress, gut, like visceral health, and not mental health, like visceral health. And your moon is your your mental health. But so because these nodes are lunar, lunatic, maniac, mania, the nodes are moon aspects in these signs that are other planetary energies. And so whatever these nodes go into, we're going to have these emotional hyperbole experiences because they are the ecliptic, which are these algorithmic points where no planets actually are, which means it's VR of what we're experiencing. It's not actually happening. It's an emotional projection of our psychology, of our chart, of our traumas, of our history, of our experiences, of our failures and successes, of gains and losses. And it's a replay circuit connection with the house, 6th house, 12th house. And so 12th house is like heaven and hell. It's prison and paradise. It's the isolation of the vacation, retreat, meditation, or the isolation in the straitjacket. It's the meditation ritual or the drug addiction ritual. And so it's like if you're out on the beautiful island paradise, the weather can change in an instant, and it could be hurricane, tornado, tidal wave, tsunami. Like, holy shit, I want to go home. Mm-hmm. Like, oh wait, I can't get home. Oh wait, I'm feeling loss. I'm feeling abandonment. I'm feeling like literally floating in space, like there's no ground or above or below. And so it can have this overwhelming, disorienting like experience, which is on that same circuit right to the gut, 6th house. Oh shit. Ketu, Virgo, Virgo is the gut of that Pisces crown overwhelm. Because Virgo is kind of like the root, where you could say that Scorpio 8th house is the actual root chakra, but your sense in the world is your gut, and so like we're having a and so Ketu, to define that, we haven't gone there yet, is so Ketu is, they say in Western, the dragon's tail, but it's like your past mastery, your last life, your karmic past, your apathy from your mastery. And so it's not what you resist, but you're just uninspired because you know it. Whereas Rahu is like your ego's mind's eyes, vision, future, mirage, oasis. That's like, your positive ego, but also your negative ego. And, just what you think you're building in life. What am I here to do? Like, what's my North Star? That's my North Node, and I think that's the full moon and the solar eclipse. Probably not totally accurate, but it's everything we think we want that may or may not turn out to be what we need or actually our truth or what we desire, that makes us turn back around and choose Ketu again, which is our past, our comfort, our root, what we know, our familiarity. Ketu's more of the sadhu renunciate, where Rahu's the go-getter, Houdini Jedi. Rahu can be kept out of nowhere. Like, Rahu can get into everywhere and has the ability to become all things or do anything. Like, Rahu's like this dark demon genie, and he snuck into so Rahu and Ketu used to be the same entity, and I forget his real name, but we'll call him Rahu, snuck into the council of deities where Vishnu was passing out the elixir of life. And somehow Rahu got past, but he didn't go unnoticed. And Vishnu, being Vishnu, knew that karmically this was destined, and he still had to do what he had to do. And in that time, he noticed. He cut Rahu's head off, like right as he was taking the cup, because he had this like dark cloak on. You couldn't see his face. He's like a demon dragon. But right when his head got cut off, one drip of the elixir got to the body. And so his curse was that he would be forever eternal, but separate. And so his body had no head, and his head had no body. And so the head had all the senses, like Pac-Man, but none of the satisfaction of the fat man.
And welcome to quantum poet Nick Hazloch's rhyming rap. All right, Nick, that's all really interesting. I love it all. I'm catching maybe 30 to 40% of it. For anyone that's listening to this, I'm totally a beginner when it comes to Vedic astrology, which is different than what is the other sort of astrology that most folks... Western astrology. So coming back to the nodes, is it the node transit? Yeah, the nodes that you were posting about. Tell it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. What's going on right now?
Got it.
You've explained it now in full, or somewhat not in full.
Mostly, yeah.
Vedic astrology, as you would tell me, is infinite, so it's certainly not full. Bring it back down to ground, 5-year-old. What's going on? If somebody didn't know anything about Vedic astrology, they don't know any of the houses, actually in their life psychology body.
Right. And so, what's going on? Pisces, 12th house, loss, and it's also the house of God and spirit, the unmanifest, that which is never physical, but it's also the creative mind. And then you have the 6th house, enemies, obstacles, challenges, refinement, the gut. And so Ketu can bring us back to those areas, and then Rahu is bringing us forward to his areas. And so we can feel stretched between enemies and obstacles and progress and hard work. Oh, that's another thing. Virgo is like the house of the hands and labor and like carpentry and building, and Mercury, all the parts, the mechanics.
Is that why I got a Dremel for Christmas from my sister?
Possibly, yeah. We're being brought back to the simple, organic, hands-on methods, even though Mercury rules electronics, Virgo is like the earth sign.
And how long is this specific window occurring? You said?
About 2 months.
2 months. So when did it begin and when is it ending?
I don't have those dates exactly.
Or broadly?
I'd say we could have another month in it.
Got it.
I think.
Got it. So how are you finding in your life on the ground, practically speaking, this is playing out? Or like, what's an example on the ground?
For me, interestingly, I feel like my chart is a little run in reverse to the collective. Being an astrologer, I'm naturally a little wired reverse from the collective. And so I feel like my life is finally turning around in a good way, where I can see a lot of people are getting challenged and turned around in a good way, but it might not be totally congruent to what they expected, even though it's bringing in more congruency to what they've projected. And sometimes to get what we're hoping for takes more dirty work than we expected.
Yeah, that's what I'm going through right now. There's a spiritual teacher online, a young woman named Mani Onami I've been listening to a lot. She keeps saying faith without works is delusion. And I think there's so much of my life, honestly, that I'm like, well, I have faith, I have confidence, abundance-minded thinking. I'll just do what feels right, what's in flow, be creative, and this and that everything will just manifest. And it's sort of realizing on the ground, well, no, like faith without works is delusion. It's not that I don't work, but maybe I have to get really down nitty-gritty. I was telling you just out there, I'm waking up early right now. I'm trying not to smoke as much, really trying to put the pedal to the metal and grind, because I'm finding that there isn't actually forward progress right now. Even when it feels great, I'm like, well, where's the actual tactile fruit? And so that's what I'm going through right now, was really realizing, I have to actually work. You have to do the work. You can't just surrender back into it.
And so Pisces is that loss, is that away, is kind of the fruitless house of ends, the 12th house, the undoing. And so Rahu Pisces is like rushing towards falling apart. But wait, Ketu Virgo is bringing us back to the rooted earth, the real way, our original self, our actual path. the dirty work of getting our hands dirty, being the janitor, getting our hands dirty, doing the dirty work, all the things we're too good for, or we shouldn't have to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that again that Ketu really signifies, is back to like, I've been there, done that. Oh wait, Ketu is the been there, done that, but do it again, the refinement. And so in addition to the nodes, part of, the response to a lot of the questions that I haven't mentioned yet is what's going on with Venus.
Well, what's going on with Venus?
Venus. Yeah, so Venus in Mula Nakshatra, which is another lunar, it's like a sign within a sign. So we have, I should have studied this more, but we're just riffing. So every sign, there's 2.5 nakshatras. Okay, I'm remembering. Mula is in Sagittarius. And so there's 2.5 lunar mansions or moon phases per sign. And so right now Venus is in the sign of Sagittarius in the lunar house nakshatra of Mula. And what I find interesting as an astrologer and a wordsmith and a poet is the phonetics of all these Sanskrit words are the vibrational phonetic definition sound of, if you were speaking slang, show me the Mula. Kritika is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Ashwini is the victorious winner, winning. And so it's like in every sign, or every word has that intuitive cognate, like phonetic definition that you don't even have to know the language, but you can feel it.
Yeah, I fucking love that shit. I don't think I was awake to that until the last couple of years. Just even outside of astrology, the vibratory force of all words, going all the way up to the Vedas, but even just you say winning, it's just like, my daughter's name's Winnie, and when I say all we do is win, it's like my daughter's name's Winnie, but win is in there, and
right.
Whether you as a wordsmith, and I notice so many other poets and speakers in the spiritual seeker space are clued into that, and the way puns and rhymes operate, and the way words trace back all the way to the source, and the vibratory resonance of these words, they get into our bones even if we don't intellectually understand what they mean. So are you saying that astrologically then all of these different houses, all of these different movements, the meaning is just in the vibratory sound itself, outside of the whole intellectual framework itself too, right?
Totally. And really that's the true foundation of what's actually happening with astrology. What is astrology for? What is it doing? Why is it there? How is it even doing? How is those things up there actually affecting my life? Which is like the biggest question, but the reality is that the astrology is the cymatic sound system, phonetic generator, precipitator of the whole puppet show of life. We're far more than puppets, but, a lot of times we feel like we're puppets. Most people feel like they have the effect on nothing, or sometimes people feel like I'm really doing it well and I have effect on a lot of things, and I don't need astrology. Astrology doesn't control me, I control me. And
how much control then do folks actually have? I know that's a sort of paradoxical question that's hard to get at. So it's just as big as the question of free will.
Mm-hmm.
Like from an astrological perspective, are we just party to the waves that are carrying us to an inevitable end, or do we, in these moments, in these transits, do we actually have control? I know we actually have. I personally know that I have control spiritually as to what I will, but there is that constant question in astrology.
But it would be a dirty trick if you weren't allowed to feel like you knew you had control. It would be an evil, dirty, fateless world. If we weren't allowed, so I like to say free will is a program script.
Yeah.
That is necessary to have an organic experience.
Yeah.
Just like the 8th house is a program script for the mysteries, blindness, unknown path of what's going to unfold. So as much as we plan, there's always an 8th house there that has other plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so if we weren't allowed to make our plans, we wouldn't need an eighth house.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it would all be planned, everything would be fated,
Yeah.
known, and there would be no organic life.
It's interesting when I look back on my life, in the past feels inevitable and I didn't plan any of it and it just occurred. In fact, it feels self-evident that it just occurred and I had no control over it and it's all in God's plan. But yet, as life is unfolding, it feels, of course I'm controlling every day, every moment I'm controlling. And so that's a weird paradox.
Right. And so one of my analogies is it's like flying to Hawaii, right? There's first class, business, economy, regular cabin, but we're all going to the same place. And you're free to roam around the cabin. You're free to pick your seat. You may never mix. You might mix. Every archetype is riding the bus.
Mm-hmm.
The whole spectrum is on the plane, but they're all ended up in the same place.
Mm.
And so free will is like that ability to be the character on the plane and choose your seat, pick your seat, and do whatever you do. But at the end of the flight, we're all equally getting off the plane and going to the same place.
We're all going to the beach in Hawaii.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the great ocean in the sky or whatever that is. And so just to respond to some things you said earlier, also about the free will is the paradox.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the truth is both and, not
Mm-hmm.
neither nor,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or either or. It's both and. And so the paradox is that we have free will and it's fated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also feel we have free will in between lives in the court of souls and gods and deities, like where we're in the high council of our karma and, where we're hashing it out in our higher self realm of holy shit, It's like we just did human DMT of becoming a person and dropping out of the infinite bandwidth of frequency, timeless time of the hive collective consciousness of the astral realm. And then we drop into these singularities as humans that are these fixed fractal sets of experiences. They're ooh, I want this and I want this. And so we're free will in our human crystal code. I also call astrology is your quantum QR code. It's the root seed of everything that will and won't and would and could happen if you did or didn't, from all the way into the past and the future. But that code's only valid for this ride, even though it has, it points to your previous one and your future one.
Yes, sir.
And so it's the more I know, the less I know. Even though the more I understand, the more I allow and let go. Because when we're looking into astrology, you have to acknowledge a higher aspect to things and the higher forces at play. And, and I think the spiritual world can get caught up in the fads of the facades and, all the trends. But they're only popular because they're true.
What's an example?
Oh, I don't know, ayahuasca, cacao.
Yeah.
Speaking
of the spiritual community, then, what sort of engagement, to bring it back to the root here, what sort of other folks' engagement was popping up that people were resonating with, given all the movements you've been articulating?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned stomach stuff.
Right. Yeah, just everything you were relating, just the challenge to get back to the basics, dealing with the nitty-gritty, reevaluating self, refining 086 houses, progress, refinement, getting rid of what doesn't work, what's not necessary. Ketu's also refinement, so it's a double refinement. And I think that's why this particular node is so powerful. They say the Pisces Ketu axis is actually the hardest one. It's the last one. When you do your whole wheel of the chart, as a soul, not a person. And
what does that mean when you do your wheel of a chart as a soul, not a person?
So when you're so I believe that we will be every iteration of the chart. Like we have to fulfill all the archetypal placements.
We, given the individuated soul, or we the collective? Okay.
The collective and the individuated soul, or because the individual soul creates the collective. Without the individual, there is no collective. And so it's like it's all the musical chairs, and then chairs keep getting removed or added. But it's this quantum musical chairs, like astrology, because there's 12 houses. It's like 8. I should know all this stuff better. 8 planets, 9 planets. What's really interesting is Earth isn't considered a planet in astrology.
Why is that? Because it's the home to the whole game?
Well, I mean, it's considered the body, like Earth is the body.
Okay.
But this might have to be a whole nother podcast. But it gets into the nature of what is Earth.
Yeah, we can save that because I was telling Abby and Molly before we came here. I was like, Hazloch and I are one day going to talk about flat Earth, and I want to do a whole thing about flat Earth and the nature of Earth, which I know can tie into a lot of stuff. So maybe we should save that. Yeah. Say that's a teaser for anyone that's still listening. That more the nature of Earth, both astrologically and geographically.
Totally.
Okay.
So yeah, planetary. But we'll keep it Vedic. Graha, luminary, shining one, wandering star, and then fixed. The constellations are fixed stars, and the planets, grahas, the luminaries, are wandering stars, but to a fixed path. And we'll drop one more seed. Why Earth isn't a planet is because, like, the planets rotate as they do. I'm having a brain fart. So, you grab it. Lost it. Okay, here it is. Got it. Found it. All cultures of all time, of all geographies, have all had the same names for the planets, days of the weeks, and the constellations, and they've never changed.
That's fucking nuts. That stuff's nuts.
And everything of all cultures, in all times, was always fixated to astrology. Doesn't matter if you're Dogon, thinking you're from the dog star Sirius, or, you're the Anunnaki from Nibiru, or, from the Pleiades, or, the Dracos, star systems. Like, there are no stories and no religions and no theologies that are separate from the stories of the heavens. They don't exist.
Do you feel like we've lost that in modernity? Certainly, we've sort of untethered ourselves from that. That's primarily one of the...
I don't believe in the royal we.
Say more about that.
Well, the collective we of, like, the social deprecating memes.
We being the pop culture reference of culture and what the mainstream lifts up as relevant and
because
true.
when you pull off the veil of the dogma of the negative projection that we've devolved to, there's still really a lot of culture and history thriving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, keyword is modernity has stripped us from the old world root, of which that Ketu Virgo is bringing us back to. Ketu is an aspect of Sagittarius. But Venus, we've talked about this a little less. The planet is kind of going through what the nodes are making us go through in that progress refinement. So Venus, our passions, our connections, our love, our intimacy is kind of being shredded right now. Like Venus is going through a phoenix of Mula and Sagittarius. The saga Sagittarius, the Sagittaries, the sage Aries, the sadhu fire, the wisdom warrior, the one who's on. So Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter represents the father, Sag represents tradition, orthodoxy, lineage, devout tribalisms, piercings, tattoos, dreadlocks, bodily decoration, because that's all like traditional culture, actually. Like vanilla normie, middle America, Nikes, Reeboks, and some mall clothes. That's the opposite of Sag.
My Nikes.
Yeah, I mean, we're all of it. But like to really hone in, like what is Sag, is like the epicness of the wandering sadhu. The discipleship.
Yeah.
Monks, orders, brotherhoods, wisdoms.
And where are we at the moment in regards to Sag?
So Venus is in Mula, which is in Sag. And so Venus, in her highest state, is in Pisces, which is ironic, which I hadn't put together to talk about. But so Venus is exalted in Pisces and debilitated in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. Sag is ruled by Jupiter. Venus is debilitated in Virgo because it's Mercury ruled, because when Venus is in her mind, you can't do math and have sex, or like you can't be mental and be sensual at the same time, or like, when you say something the wrong thing that's not in the vibe, you can like lose the mood.
Mm-hmm.
Venus wants to be in her heightened sensuality, where when she's like forced to do her checkbook, or Cinderella, Venus in Virgo is like Cinderella. She's the princess queen that doesn't know who she is, or doesn't have time because she's dirty.
And she's in Virgo right now.
No, she's in Mula and Sag.
Okay.
But there's this interesting triangle going on, because you can't ever really just look at one thing, because the nodes are like the lunar hyperbole of what we think's happening that's not the actual happening, but it's our like anxious mind.
That's interesting, because I've been, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really in depth with the Enneagram and somewhat the fourth way teachings and Gurdjieff and so forth. And, the power of three and the Trinity and so forth is not a novel idea from any specific lineage, given that it's ubiquitous, but that there almost doesn't exist any sort of relational engagement with reality that doesn't have 3 points: neutral, passive, active. And so you just
Proton,
said
neutron, electron,
exactly across the board, every
future.
And so even to look at astrology, you can't just look at, this is in this house. You have to look at that triumvirate. Is that what you're saying, right?
Right. It's like eating soup. Soup is one thing made of many things.
Mm-hmm.
But you have broth is the majority. And then you have the substance, and then you have the spices, and then you have like major and minor flavors.
Do you feel like that's why some folks, perhaps myself included, find it so difficult to latch on to astrology in a deep way, is because there is that level of complexity? Not that I don't enjoy complex thinking and actually grasp a lot of complex thinking easily, but certain astrology ideas to me are still sort of hard for me to formulate. And it's like, well, it's in this house, but it's also connected to this house, and this is going on, and you're sort of bouncing constantly. Not you, but generally to make sense of it.
Yeah. So that's a great question, and so the answer is always the paradoxical both and.
Yeah.
So the cheeky astrologer comment is, it's in your chart whether or not you're interested in your chart or astrology, or what type of mysticism you're interested in, or if any at all. If you're a type A football, Western traditional business, that's in your chart. Or if you're total hippie, crunchy, or any flavor of reality is in your chart, and the way you perceive your reality is the chart, actually. And that's what's important. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about this, and just the nature of perception is, to me, one of the major things of astrology that's like the most relevant. That if I had to explain it to a 5-year-old, what would I say? It's the filter of your perception. How you perceive, how you're receiving what you're perceiving, and the nature and timing and flavor of the whole unfolding. But thankfully, because there's an 8th house, like as much as we measure the knowing, there's still like inorganic, blind, innate, random, left field aspect. And so that's the solution. Like you can't ever know enough to remove the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people get afraid of, they don't want to know, or they don't want to become accountable or responsible, or look through the crystal ball and ruin the experience. And so that's where the free will fate paradox comes in, like whether or not you look in the crystal ball is in your chart.
Yeah,
with that planetary transit crossing node axis, you know what I mean? So like,
well, it's funny. I mean, it's when I was looking into mine last year, I asked you what I should look into, and you sent me a couple of YouTubers, and I was just like deep diving on their stuff. And my charts are all about, even if it's outside of astrology, any of the different patterns, they all have my interest in the occult and mysticism and spirituality. Generally, it is all there. Which
8th house stuff or what?
I don't even remember the houses, dude. Okay. I mean, I wish I did, but like I take from this sort of just the broad strokes, and it's funny the stuff you remember too. It's like, oh, he said like one sentence there that was so apt to what I was going through that I remember it. Like it said for me, and this is just like a random thing, I don't remember what house it was, that naturally I am somebody who travels a lot. That in my chart is somebody that would be bouncing from place to place to place, but it was like reversed or something. No, it wasn't reversed, but something else was blocking it. So it said normally I would be somebody that would be traveling a lot.
Like Saturn 12th house. They say Saturn 12th house people never stop traveling.
But I don't actually travel that much, and it's always been a feeling in my life that like I want to and should and think I should. Like it's not that I'm not doing.
Oh wait, your body's not traveling,
but the mind is.
Your mind is.
Yeah.
And so you like to go far out. I mean, so 12th house is the astral travel.
Yeah. That's how I got in. That's as an adult. That's how I got into spirituality. At first, was I found out that astral travel was a thing. I've told you that story before. I was like a materialist, and then I discovered I was into aliens, and then I was on Reddit, and I was looking at the CIA documents and remote viewing, and then I
stare at goats.
Yeah, I didn't even know about.
So there's all these basic 3D world anecdotes of these spiritual world powers, dimensions, abilities, realities.
Yeah, and it was the discovery of those things that pulled me in like a fucking magnet. I couldn't believe when I was reading the testimonies of out-of-body travel, and then I could, in theory, go home tonight and lay in my bed and leave my body. Like, to me, it was mind-blowing, and I spent a whole year just focused.
Wait, you mean I can use the mind that I have to keep thinking in the same mind space that I use all day, and then lay down and realize it and blow my mind by realizing I have a mind?
Yes, exactly. That the mind is far bigger than the body. To a materialist, this was, and whether that's in my chart or not, that was sort of the doorway to me. And now it's funny because these days, my actual seeking, my actual devotion, my prayer is so embodied and of this moment and hopefully present and alert. It has nothing to do with astral travel and the starseed children and the Sirius constellations. I mean, that stuff is intellectually interesting to me. But there's, so many people in the space that have that sort of flighty new age way in, whether that actually is their way in.
Which is also Pisces. But the flavor of your Pisces kind of is the flavor of, what dimension of far out are you? Are you flaky, fluffy, softy, super Venusian? Are you like some kind of Martian Jedi warrior in the 12th house that's just like pushing further?
Are you asking me?
It's a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
It's like, but it's there. Both of those, or all of the archetypes, are kind of in that vein.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm just kind of talking on unrelated stuff at this point because we were talking about the nature of traveling, and while I don't travel that often, whether that's in my chart that I would be traveling a lot, or that not blocked, and sorry if I'm not using the correct terminology, but that I just, and maybe in future decades of my life I'll be traveling a lot, but we were talking earlier, like through the lens of the Enneagram, which is really the lens that I seem to have naturally been pulled into, and sort of the perceptive mechanism in which I am witnessing my own persona and essence unfold and move through the world. The Enneagram really just is like permeated my mind. And as a 7, the 7 is naturally known as the flighty person going from this to that, to this to that, to this to that, the people who travel endlessly and travel the world and can't stay in one place. And for me, I never related to that. And in fact, didn't know I was a 7 for a long time, or an Enneagram type 7, at least from a personality perspective. If we're actually talking about the Enneagram, this is just a vibratory moving force, just like anything else. The personality layer of it is just one tiny slice, but from a personality perspective. But when it was unlocked by this Enneagram transpersonal therapist that Molly and I see, that I was very clearly a 7, and realized that that 7 mechanism was just in the mind, that the movement from thing to thing and the intrigue with whatever's new and the sparkling novel experience, oh my God, the next YouTube link, the next Reddit post, this crazy idea that just came to me. It's like these kind of, I love new ideas. Like, nobody's ever thought of this before, like no one's ever thought of this, constantly bouncing from thing to thing to thing, where it's not physical travel necessarily, but it is travel of the mind.
And what's wild is we're in Rahu Pisces, and so all of the energy, all of the expression, all the articulation of the adjectives and everything you're using is like literally actually the placement of where the North Node is. And so it's like, for me, I keep coming back to just how literal these placements iterate and how we embody these energies. And like, it's profound to like bring in some just like stillness and present awareness to like how that lunar Rahu ego North Node of like wherever the excitement is, that's Rahu. And so it's like all this creative energy and bouncing, Rahu is that infinite anywhere dimensional shapeshifter, time traveler in the house of the creative infinite spirit. Yeah, it's never ending, but it's just cool, profound.
I think about that. Do you think about this? Like, I think about, has anyone thought of this? Has this idea ever come to anybody? And there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's just a manifestation of the same source, just being said in different ways. But especially when I smoke weed, I didn't smoke tonight, but when I'm on cannabis, and maybe this is how everyone who smokes feels, but like, oh wow, like this idea nobody has ever expressed before. It's original thought. It's original thought. And it could be something as trivial about an idea about a movie or about like the nature of existence. And I think that's probably just the universal psychedelic altered state experience, is that it all feels new.
It's transcendent.
Yeah.
We thinking we're achieving a new dimension, reality space, like we're leaving this normal, mundane.
And in my own sort of reach for authenticity, and by reach it's actually surrender to the essence, so there is no reach, but in doing so there's this feeling that, well, we're all here to just express the same thing, and how we express that thing is our sort of gift to the world. And so if we're expressing it in a way that's new or novel or interesting, that other people find fascinating or resonant
through your chart.
Exactly.
Yeah, how you express.
Yeah. You said earlier it's like the chart, like a perceptive mechanism, and I'm sure this has been said before too, but the way an astrology chart looks, it's almost like that's just being like cast over our eyes, right? It's like a netting. The actual filter, there's almost an actual visual filter, right?
Totally. Yeah, it's like a vibrational, hyperdimensional filter, quantum, you name it, all of them.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing escapes that lens, because that is your psyche, it's your soul, it's your reality, it's the actual happening of the randomness.
Here's a question for you.
It's the synchronization of the randomness.
Yeah. I was listening to somebody talk about the Enneagram the other day, and basically I'm relating everything to the Enneagram because that's the language.
Yeah. And Enneagram is a derivation of astrology too.
And I'm curious on that note, because to my mind, from the Gurdjieffian, like the way Gurdjieff articulated it via the Sufis was sort of mathematical, like the law of octaves, the law of 7 plus the law of 3.
None of that exists outside of astrology.
But can astrology be born out of that? Could the octaves of the universe, is that the primary mechanism out of which these movements are drawn? Like where did the actual planetary cosmological system being drawn out from this abstraction of a mathematical octavized system?
Right. I mean, and here again, it's both and for me, from my perspective and what I find and read, it's probably a little too absolutist for most, but like literally nothing perceptible, dimensional, or in reality precedes astrology. All time-space theory, like numbers themselves, are precipitated from the planets. And so I think the major gap to bridge in integrating like the real aha moment integration of astrology is that these planets aren't like orbiting dirt balls that just NASA has been to, or astronauts, or whatever you believe about outer space is just some like pragmatist, materialist, mechanical, atheist, Big Bang, dirt ball explosion, and human consciousness is 0.000 to the 10 to the 24th of the total matter of the universe. So really, we're like a cosmic. We're not even a grain of sand of time, which is like a real atheist perspective of like, oh, we're a burden on reality, versus, oh wait, Earth isn't a planet because it is the soul, it is the self. We are the divine soul system. It's a solar system. We are the purpose, experience, or the perspective of the reality, that not from a self-centered narcissistic perspective of, oh, I'm human and everything has to revolve around me, but just that the miracle of divinity and existence itself, like nothing should exist.
Yeah. And
we're being gaslit about our existence as if it's not divine. And that's why astrology is hidden and kept away, because it is so powerful. It can spin you in, it can spin you out, it can spin you up, it can spin you down. It's a hell of a drug, like use wisely.
Yes, yeah. All right, so what I was going to ask you, because, it's a yes and question as to what came first. Right. And I know whether it's the abstract mathematics at the core of the cosmos, or it's whatever the yes and is, mm-hmm. however it's articulated. I was listening to this this teacher about the Enneagram, and she said, like, in theory, one can just look at the actual 9-point symbol of the Enneagram. If they just stared at it long enough and you were open enough, you'd know all things. It's all in the Enneagram, just in the way all things are in astrology.
Totally.
Could one look, you or one who's a real expert, just look at a chart and just understand
That's
the entire...
That's how it happens to me. I get immediate, like, guttural, vibrational, like I'll see things, I'll hear things. Just, that quantum intuitive mind is literally absorbing the field. Like, air isn't empty, and air's not just these molecules of the periodic table stuff of matter. Everything is consciousness. And, just to rewind to the back thing of the punchline of the paradox of, did numbers and math and octaves precede planets? No, planets seeded numbers and all of these tools of measurement of the experience, because the planets are actual deity, God, luminaries. And then, little flat earth seed from the Vedic lens is that there is no outer space in a material geographical way. And, these planets aren't like just these dirtball, rock mountain, gaseous bubble, material, mechanical, godless, atheist algorithms. They're living entities. You can't land on them. Like, they're cymatic crystals of consciousness emanating their own self-derived light. And that's why they're called grahas and luminaries. Like, they're not bouncing light off the sun or from the sun. They're not... Every planet has its own cymatic flicker. If you look at a planet in a telescope, it looks like you're looking in a microscope, because the planet like oscillates, and each planet has their own little pulse shape wave. And so every picture we've seen of outer space has all been a CGI artist rendering. They don't show us actual outer space photos because they're all frequency, radio, telescope, just all gamma, X-ray. Like, none of these things are visually optic. they're all radio frequencies that get reassembled back into what we think that picture looks like.
Yeah, that's a good tease for another episode, because whether that's connected to flat Earth or otherwise.
But yeah, and I say believe nothing, experience everything. Do I believe in flat Earth? Hell no. Do I believe in round Earth? Definitely not.
Yeah, that's so hard for folks to grasp onto. But again, I don't want to get down to that rabbit hole, because I think it's like it's so prime, because it's not just about the flat Earth. It's about actually what we invest our embodied experience in, and what do we actually know.
Flat or not, or what, to me it's anti-semantic. It's like sometimes the nuance matters and sometimes the nuance doesn't matter. And then if we're fighting over the nuance of like, you can only speak this way about what matters. If I can't speak about the way I think it matters, then what is there? Yeah. And we can't have a conversation about anything. There is no perspective to share. Then we don't even need the chart.
We just need to look at. Then we can just look at the chart and intuit the entire symbolic resonance, and we don't need to say anything, huh?
Right. But in that dimension, a chart couldn't exist.
In the dimension in which we're not able to speak about what matters.
Right.
Yeah.
If that were an actual reality, like astrology wouldn't be a reality as well. Mm-hmm. But because astrology is a reality, there is a hyper nuanced difference between everything. Yeah. Even though it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're coming up, believe it or not, at like 53 minutes, Nick. Wow. We're already it flies through, huh? Fun stuff. Cheers the mic. Before we sign off, because we kicked this off as addressing your Instagram story. Right. I want to stay there for a moment. Is there anything else that feels like you want to unpack, given that present topic that we're sort of bounding out from and coming back to?
Yeah, the real meat of that response is about Venus in relationship to the nodes in the place she's in. We all have a Venus in his Jupiter's sign, Sag, the father. Venus is in the father's house. It's not really a comfortable place, it's like, everybody's got daddy issues, and so it's like Venus has to face her daddy issues, so to speak. Mula, it's time for Venus to pay her rent. She has to get a job and work. So all of our sensualities and our senses, and I don't say that in a masculine and feminine way, but just we all have that inner feminine component. We all have the masculine component, that archetypal she that is moving for all of us is in like this phoenix fire of, from the Virgo Pisces node, just like the loss and the learning and the recalibration through the hardship that you're like, why is this happening? Well, you asked to get better. You asked for more. Now it's time to do the work to get that more and have the upgrade, whether it's a loss or a challenge from that Pisces Virgo, that node phase we're in. And so I've heard a lot of people having some relationship struggles and things coming up, and just a real crucible. But what's cool is I'm hearing people being more reflective and more curious rather than like victimhood or, just anxious or angry or just feeling stuck in a bad spot. I'm seeing like wide-eyed curiosity, which is new, and not new, but it's cool. Like,
you feel like that curiosity is percolating up to the surface more than it normally is.
At least in my local reality.
Yeah.
In Asheville, like, I think we all are a little more emotionally sensitive oriented in kind of like the nuance of things than the rest of mainstream. But I think, for me, seeing people get even more leaning in my direction of like actually interested in astrology is cool. It's fun, because that's what I'm about.
Yeah. So I think it's more than just Asheville. I think the times are shifting.
Yeah, we're waking up. This shit's biblical, whether you believe it or not. Like the world is churning and burning. And,
man.
All the holy lands are never stopped.
Yeah, the times do feel biblical, and I suppose they've always felt biblical, but it does also feel like something's really happening. Something beneath the surface is rising up.
Well, no part of history has been outside of religious, theological, astrological context. Like, there's no other prime mover to the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally no other prime mover to the psyche. It's all astrology of the powers and the paupers and the priests and the peasants and the lords and, you know, the whole cast of characters in between.
On that topic, before we go, I want to know a totally separate question astrologically, just broad strokes. What does 2024 as a whole hold astrologically? And maybe that's too big of a question to just toss at the end. But
I've been thinking about it.
I'm curious. You're talking about that people are waking up. That's probably more general and also perennial than just this year. But we're talking about this 2-month node here. But the beginning of the year, everybody's got their New Year's resolutions. They're setting off into the new year, hoping it's going to be great. But I know in my life and everyone I've been talking to, like the first few weeks of the year have been like really rocky. Both what we're talking about and just, I mean, that's why. But everyone I talk to, whether they're astrologically minded or not, they're telling me these stories. And so the year itself is at least starting off in a sort of tumultuous manner. Is that the whole year holds for us? I mean, culturally, domestically, there's a lot of shit going on, but what is it looking like astrologically?
Yeah, the most basic immediate way to break it down is like 2024. 2024. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4 is 8. You know, so 8, 8th house, Scorpio, the unmeasurable mystery of hidden gains and losses, inheritance, death, taxes, sex, birth, diseases. You know, we're starting this year out with, you know, war and disease and, you know, possible round 2, 3 of who knows what bacterial thing next. You know, and so we're really beginning this year in an 8 way, in an 8th house way. 8's the infinity symbol, the mystery. You know, 8 is, the quantum time jump, the esoteric, the mystery, you know. And so, like, all those traumas, you know, like all the unfathomable, unmeasurable, like weird things that are going to trigger us to our higher next levels, I think we can see happening in the world right now, you know, but 8 is the most important house because that is where your wealth, your biggest secrets, your biggest gains, your biggest mysteries, your biggest, deepest learnings and esoteric revelations, you know. Like the 8th house is, you know, the curtain and behind the curtain of like, and so even in pop culture, all the weird, dark stuff that's coming out about the who's who and the rulers and the countries and, you know, weird stuff's coming out. We don't have to go there, but
we can save Jeffrey Epstein for another episode.
Right, yeah. And so it's all coming out and we're really riding that wave hard, like right now.
Yeah.
You know, and so like this year versus last year 2023 was a 7 Libra, 7th house, contracts, agreements. Libra, liberals, Venus, safety, nice, kindness, you know, all that Libra, liberal, moral, minority, value of LGBTQ.
Yeah, that we're done. That's done this year.
Right, and so, but Rahu last year was a Rahu Aries year, and we just moved into Pisces, and so that, you know, all that Trump energy, all that fight energy, Aries, you know, and so it was a whole nother turbocharged energy of last year, and so now we're moving into a 2024. It's an 8.
Oh,
hey. All right.
For anyone that's just listening, a
cat. The black cat talking about the 8 comes and changes and darkens the mood. I mean, you can't make that shit up. It's like that literally.
Oh, that's good stuff. Is the Trump energy, though, is that the 8 energy or is that last year's energy?
It's both. Unmeasurable. You know, he's Rahu first house. He's unmeasurable. Mm-hmm. You know, like you can't, every time people have tried to predict his downfall or is this or is that, he's like glass.
Yeah.
Or he's been literally like Rahu. He's Rahu first house. You know, Rahu's the demon. I mean, I don't have an opinion on Trump being good or bad. Who knows? I mean, everybody's good or bad up there. I mean, they all could be on the same team, whatever.
Yeah.
But Rahu is the Houdini that, like, no matter what, you can't catch him, but he's always known. Like, you always know where Rahu is, even though you don't know where he's going to go next. Everywhere he is, you know.
Yeah.
You just don't know what you just can't read his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you can measure the physical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wrap it up, 2024. I think, a lot of change, a lot of weird good, some weird bad. I think ultimately it's going to be a great growth year, but I think there's going to be some really unexpected, weird, large cultural things happening.
That's my feeling. Even outside of it, it's just like stuff's going to happen this year.
I think some things might happen this year that we would never culturally believe would happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even fathom. But even just because it's innate, what happens could be something that we've never even fathomed.
Yeah.
And couldn't even logically come up with might happen.
Yeah. A true black swan event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been saying this year is, we're in the all those anomaly theoretical projections for this year.
Well, we've left the folks at home with lots of teasers and Easter eggs for not only coming episodes, but the coming year. This has been good, Nick.
Yeah.
I hope everyone listening enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be back for more.
Yeah, and the straight through, unedited.
Yeah, we're not editing.
Cut.
We're not editing this, folks, for interpersonal reasons of myself. That I am an editor by trade and edit everything I do, and can barely stand putting anything out in the world that's imperfect. And thus, with this, sorry for you if it's a little long, but for this, we're keeping it unedited, raw.
Keeping it real world.
Maybe I'll put something at the beginning and the end. We'll see, but the body of it will stay as is. This has been Nick Hazloch and Joe Sinopoli signing off.
Thank you, Joe.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.